my job is to basically investigate what companies are doing. I read the terms and conditions that no one reads. We work with cybersecurity companies to investigate data flows. We analyze how companies use design to potentially manipulate consumers. We file legal complaints, and we work globally, or especially transatlantic. So I'm also the chair of something called the Transatlantic Consumer Dialogue, which is the digital committee there, which is a network of about 80 groups in Europe and the US. So when I do my work at the Norwegian Consumer Council, I often leverage that system or that network because the services we look at are typically transatlantic and more or less the same in every country. So my job here today is to present some thoughts and some research that we've done. Some of it might be provocative to some of you. Some of you might be even offended by my point of view, and that's fine. We have time afterwards to also discuss. I'm going to be here the whole day, and I'd love to discuss with you, and you're more than welcome to challenge my assumptions and my conclusions. But this is my point of view, or our point of view, and hopefully it can be useful also in your professional work, for those of you who are working for companies, to bring this into your discussions, because this is at least how we do it, and we do it from a very thorough point of view, I would argue. So I'm going to share with you some stories and some conclusions, and hopefully also some advice in the end. But I want to start with a personal story, because I've been working at this now for 9 years at the Norwegian Consumer Council nationally. And when I was going to have my first child 4 years ago, I think it was, I knew that when you go from being a consumer in a certain age to being a consumer in the, establishing phase, your net worth from an advertising point of view increases. You're very valuable to advertisers because you don't see straight, you're in this fog, you're having a child, you throw money at things just because you think that's how you have to sort of be a parent, right? So I knew that. So I did a small experiment, and this is not to necessarily, out Google or Facebook, but Facebook and Google were the two services I targeted for my personal experiment. So I realized, okay, those two companies are the most powerful, all-extensive tracking companies in the world. So I decided, with the knowledge that I have from working this for many years, to delete the apps of those services from my telephone. I didn't delete my accounts because I can still access them from my desktop computer. I decided to move all my chats over to encrypted independent services. I did all my searches with independent search engines, independent browsers. I even used a VPN, all to protect my data trails because I wanted to protect my privacy, but also my unborn child's privacy. So I did everything within my power to reduce my digital footprint without throwing my phone in the toilets. All right? 2 months after my daughter was born, I received a message or an ad on Facebook targeting me as a dad, not only as a dad, but as a dad to a girl. So, and I clicked, why am I seeing this ad? Yeah, this company wants to reach men between the ages of 25 and 50 living in Oslo. And I don't believe that explanation for 1 second, because such a specific ad needs to have had some more information about my life that I did not see. So what happened there? I actually don't know. And if there are any people from Meta here who wants to discuss this with me afterwards, I'd love to know. But even with all the measures that I took to protect my privacy and my unborn child's privacy, I could not do it. And this is my first message. And I think probably most of you agree with this as individuals and as probably also corporate advocates for privacy in your company. You know, we cannot leave the responsibility on all of this on the consumer, right? So that's why we have regulation, and that's why we have privacy ombudsman, etc., to hopefully improve the protection, because we cannot leave this to consumers alone. So my first topic, I'm going to cover two topics in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So we're going to do this in a very concise way, hopefully. My first topic is what we call deceptive design. And for those of you who are familiar with that, you're probably aware, dark patterns, deceptive design, manipulative designs. And they are everywhere, and they undermine people's agency. Of course, there is a gray area, and what is advertising and what is deceptive design, manipulative design, that's a discussion we can have. But I think you can all be familiar with this example now that you maybe booked your summer holiday and you're going somewhere and you come into a website such as this. You will see different types of deceptive design used on websites, used to nudge us or push us into making a decision. And maybe alone, they're not as dangerous, but to put together, they create a sense of urgency, they create a fear of missing out, and they push the consumer into making a decision that might not be in their own interest. And here we see Booking.com, could have been, or Hotels.com, could have been any website really that does these things. Here you say you have there's one room left at this rate at this hotel. This is a hotel in London. I think it's quite unlikely. And anyway, research has shown that a lot of companies will use code-in scarcity. So it's a kind of a fake scarcity. I'm not saying it's happening here, but the way they design this, it's at least made to make you get the impression that there is fake scarcity. Then you move on. But then you see there is a hotel room just added in London. You're so lucky. So you're taking on this emotional roller coaster. First, there's only one room left, but don't be afraid, my friend. There's a room that was just added. And then we see, oh, but the room was booked 1 hour ago. Again, there's a time pressure. And this is a well-known dark pattern or deceptive design used to stress you and used to create a sense of urgency. But then again, you're taken back into the security of or the safety of this website where it says it's a special offer only for you. And this is used as a psychological trigger to ground you at this website and not look for better prices other places. And when you put all of that together, people are, in my view, manipulated into making a decision very quickly, possibly against their own interest. And then you have the bandwagon effect, which is sort of using social proofing, which happens in many different ways, where it says 494 people are currently looking at hotels in London. Again, meant to say, hey, everyone else is doing this, so you might as well do it. So these are called dark patterns. And for those of you working in this field, you're very familiar with this. We see them everywhere, and we see them also in the privacy field. And so we've done several reports at the Norwegian Consumer Council looking at this. We've looked at how consent procedures have been undermined. We have looked at how consumers can be locked into a service. And we've filed several legal complaints. One against Google, or two against Google, actually, one last week. Any Google representatives in the room, come and talk to me. We can talk about this.
We do have Google.
Oh, great. So we filed a complaint against Google again last week because we feel it's our opinion that they're still using what we call deceptive design to get people to share as much data as possible. We also filed a complaint against Amazon using consumer law last year. Actually, on Friday, the European Commission announced that they had settled a case with Amazon and actually found sort of us in the right. And this is really great. So we're seeing progress happening in this field using consumer law and privacy law, even though we would like it to go much faster. So I'm going to share with you a story. And again, this is not to pick on one company, but it serves as a good example. And the company I'm going to use as an example now is one of the biggest one in the world, so I think they can probably take a little bit of criticism. Because we did these reports back in, we've done them every year actually, but the one example I'm going to show you now is from 2018. So it's a bit old, and things have changed since then. But a lot of the dark patterns are still happening. So we had the consent procedure that was introduced in 2018. Everyone had to have updated consent, of course, or they didn't have to, but they should or could. And we analyzed the consent procedures for several companies, including Facebook. And this is the pop-up you would get. And typically, a pop-up happens when you're using your phone, right? And you want to go on the service, and you want to look at messages or something. So your mind is somewhere else. And this is the psychology that is often being taken advantage of when you're using digital services. Because when you access them, you are doing it not because you want to read terms and conditions, not because you want to look at settings, it's because you want to do something, whether it's Google Maps, you want to find directions, or it's Facebook, we're going to check messages, or it's Snapchat because you want to see what's new, for example, or TikTok, for that matter. And this is sadly, from our point of view, being taken advantage of time and time again, by how you design the click flow, what color you put on the buttons, and what information you give the consumer. So here is the click flow of Facebook back in the day. And this flow chart is by design ugly, okay? Because for us, it was a bit shocking when we saw this. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks to say yes to what Facebook wanted to have consent for back in the day. If you wanted to opt out, this is the click flow. 13 clicks. And it's not necessarily the amount of clicks that matter here, but it is the amount of clicks put together with other design features and language features that they put into the service.